Good day, students. I'm Miss Nampala. I am your new tutor for English. I am replacing Miss Amulungu. Welcome to English 4. I wish you all to be hard-working, dedicated and self-driven students in this course. This presentation covers the subject content in brief and some general guidelines that I want everyone to keep in mind when preparing for the 2019 examinations. Pay attention to the important learning outcomes in the index of the study guide. Pay attention to the learning outcomes of every unit of the study guide. Pay attention to the verbs. For example, discuss, list, compare and contrast or analyze so that you know what you are doing when you are answering the question. I will discuss some of the content of your study guide in order to help you prepare for the coming exams. By now, you should have a good idea what the subject is about as you have completed an assignment. Please note that I cannot give attention to the whole content. So should you have any questions, please contact me for help. Use the study guide to prepare you for the examination. In Unit 1, we have characteristics of a sonnet. So you should be able to, if it says discuss the characteristics of a sonnet, you should be able to discuss and tell me what are the characteristics of a sonnet. And also when you answer your questions, you should look at the marks allocated per question. If it's 20 marks, make sure that what you write is worth 20 marks. And do not write too much or too little. Do not write too much. If they ask you give 2 examples, give 2 examples. Do not give 3. Follow the instructions. Ne? You should also be able to differentiate between irony and sarcasm. You should be able to differentiate between the two. So you might get a statement, you might get 2 statements, and then you identify which one is irony and which one is sarcasm. Unit 2. What a teacher can do in the English language classroom to cultivate a culture of reading. Now, you should be able to discuss ways that a teacher can do or can use in the class in order to cultivate a culture of reading, because many learners do not really like reading, isn't it? They only read when they are told to do so. Now you as a teacher, what will you do in order to cultivate that culture of reading? So you should be able to do what? To explain all these things that you can do in order to motivate learners to read. Also give the reasons for using literature in the classroom. So why should we use literature in the classroom? As a teacher, why should you use literature? You should be able to give me all these reasons. We have the criteria for choosing literature for your class. When you are choosing literature books, for example, for your class, what is it that you are going to look at? What will you look at? So we also have those criteria, and if it says discuss the criteria, you discuss them. What is the guideline? The mark allocation per question. We have pre, while and post reading activities that a teacher can use in literature lessons. So if it's a pre-activities, you tell me which ones are the activities. You write which ones are the activities that the teacher can use in the pre, while and post reading activities when you are delivering your lesson. We have benefits of using poetry for language teaching. What are the benefits of using poetry when you are teaching your learners? Why are you teaching poetry? What are the benefits that the learners can get from poetry? You should be able to give me those benefits also. If you say discuss, you discuss. If you explain, you explain. Do not forget to look at the guiding verb, the verb that says discuss, compare and contrast, or all those ones. And then we have types of drama. We have different types of drama, isn't it? We have tragedy, we have comedy. So you should be able to differentiate between tragedy and comedy. So if a question might say differentiate between differentiate between the different two types of drama, comedy and tragedy. You explain tragedy and then you explain comedy, then you give an example of a comedy, or you give an example of a tragedy. Number 7, we have 3 types of irony in literature. 3 types of irony in literature. We have verbal irony, we have situational irony, we have dramatic irony. Now, if it says, the question might ask you, differentiate between verbal, situational, or dramatic irony. You should be able to explain verbal, situation, and dramatic, and you should be able to give an example if you are asked to do so. And the question might be that give name and explain the different types of irony in literature. So you should be able to discuss all these things. And then number 8, we have types of novels. We have picaresque narrative, we have realistic novel, we have artistic novel, social novel, documentary fiction, and regional drama. Now when it comes to the types of novels, you should be able to tell me, what is an artist novel? You tell me an artist novel is a novel that is what and what, and you also give me an example of that type of novel. If you know the name of the novel, then you tell me, for example, we have maybe you name the name of the novel, maybe anything that you can think of. So you should also learn, you should also read these novels in order for you to understand if it's a novel or not. Or you should also take note of the name of the novel and the name of the author of that novel, in order for you to help when you are giving your examples in the exam or anywhere else. You should be able to know what you are talking about. Number 9, we have the lesson plan. Now, how do we write a lesson plan? The lesson plan has different stages, and all those different stages are very important when it comes to the lesson presentation. We have many stages, like we have the theme, we have the topic, we have the syllabus objectives, we have the basic competencies, and all. We have the reflection, we have the consolidation. I'm going to explain to you what you should write when you are writing under the themes or under the topics. Now, when you are coming up with a lesson plan, you should have your syllabus with you, especially when you are completing your assignment, not during the examination, isn't it? So when you are studying for the examination, you should study your syllabus as well. Now, for the theme, what do we include in the theme? The theme is provided for you already in the syllabus. You do not have to come up with the theme yourself. It's already in the syllabus. It's under cross-curricular issues. For example, HIV and AIDS, ICT, population and population education, etc. And then we have the topic. The topics are derived from the themes. Let's say, for example, you have a lesson and you are teaching reading to your learners. If you are teaching reading to the learners if you are teaching reading to the learners that day, and your passage, they are reading a passage on HIV and AIDS, Your topic should be derived from, the topic on the passage should be derived from HIV and AIDS. For example, the prevention, how to prevent yourself from HIV and AIDS. That is what you are going to write on the topic. And the topics are also derived, they are also in the syllabus. So both the theme and the topics are already in the syllabus. Do not come up with your own. Do not write under topic. Don't write their listening, or don't write their reading, or don't write their literature. Do not do that. Okay. And then we have the syllabus objectives and the basic competencies. All these ones are also coming from the syllabus. The syllabus objectives are under learning objectives. The basic competencies are under competencies. Now for basic competencies, you should only choose one competency that you are going to master in that lesson. Do not write all the competencies, because you cannot master 10 competencies in one lesson. You only choose one competency that you want the learners to master in that single lesson. And then we have the lesson presentation. What do we do in lesson presentation? This is where you give guidelines to your learners if they are going to do the work in pairs, if they are going to do it as a class, as a whole class, or are they going to do it in groups. You tell the learners how the lesson is going to go about. Or are they going to listen to audios, or are they going to learn about somebody? Are they going to learn through themselves? What is it that the lesson is going to? How is the lesson going to go about? And then we have the presentation of the subject matter. This must include learner and teacher activities, and it also includes the teaching of competency. So this is the part where you have to teach, isn't it? So you explain that the learners are going to read the passage on HIV and AIDS, and then they are going to answer questions on the prevention of HIV and AIDS on the papers, or they are going to take notes, and then they report back. This is everything that has to do, that the learners are going to do in the lesson, and what you are going to do in the lesson as well, you as a teacher. And then the production stage also, which is also called the reflection. This stage tests whether the competency is met. Now, how will you test if the competency is met? You give individual work, which we are going to come to later on the assessment stage. I've already spoken about this. And then we have the consolidation. On the consolidation, what do you write there? You write down what the main important points of your lessons were. So let's say you are teaching HIV and AIDS, reading a passage on HIV and AIDS. You emphasize on the most important points of what was taught, or you summarize your lesson. In other words, what do you want the learners to know? What do you want the learners to keep in mind? What should they remember about the lesson? And then we have assessment or homework. This is the homework that you are going to give to the learners. Are you going to give homework? Are you going to give a test? Or are you going to give what type of assessment? This assessment is going to help you in the reflection part, which we are going to look at later. And also, there is the part of the monitoring of homework. This part is you giving revision of the previous homework. You give revision, or you give feedback on the previous day's homework. It's not the homework that you're giving that day, but the homework that you already gave yesterday, and you are going to revise. You are going to give a revision, or you're going to make corrections for yesterday's homework, so that you can move on to today's work. And then we have English across the curriculum. What do you write under this stage? You ask yourself, how did you include other subject knowledge in your lesson? How did you use other subject content in your lesson? Like I gave an example earlier, you are teaching, you gave a passage on HIV and AIDS, how to prevent yourself from getting HIV and AIDS, for example. That whole HIV and AIDS topic is already from a different subject, isn't it? It's maybe from natural science already. So you state there that you used knowledge from natural science, because HIV and AIDS is a topic from the natural science subject. Or if the learners listen to an audio about the biography of Sam Nujoma, for example, which is on history, that means that you have used the content of the social studies subject in your English lesson. And then we have the reflection. The reflection is done after the lesson is delivered. So you ask yourself, were the objectives met? Did the learners acquire the knowledge that you wanted them to acquire? Now, how will you know if your objectives are met? You have to, after you have completed the task, after the learners have completed the task, you mark the work, isn't it? You mark the homework, or you mark the test that they wrote after the lesson. Now, this will the learners' marks will determine if the competencies were met or not. If they were not met, you improvise, you strategize on how you are going to redo the lesson. And then in Unit 3, we have the sonnet characteristics. We have already spoken about that one. And then we also have the benefits of using literature in the classroom. Unit 4, we have vocabulary used in photographs. You should be able to know the vocabulary that is used in photographs. You should be able to explain and why. You should also be able to state examples. Elements of creating composition of photography. Which are the elements of creating composition of photography? There are different elements. You explain them and you give example. You should always give examples, always, in order for you to validate your answers. Also define terms on shots. Questions for interpreting the work of literature, film, or visual art. What does it mean by that? There are questions for interpreting the work of literature. So which type of questions do you use to interpret literature, or which questions you also give an example when you are asked to do so. Now, when you are in an exam room, what is it that you are supposed to do? You should read the instructions and questions carefully. Before you attempt to answer a question, make sure that you understand the question. Make sure that you follow the instructions. If the instructions are saying cross, you cross. If it says circle, you circle. If you say tick, you tick. Do not do otherwise do not do what you are not told. As a teacher, you should always use practical examples when necessary to validate your answer. Your answers will only be validated by an example. And when you are giving examples, use your own examples. Come up with your own examples. Be creative. You are a teacher and you should be able to create your own examples. Provide sufficient answers, meaning don't write too little or too much. Also, check the marks allocated to determine the strength of your answer. So the mark at the end of each question will determine what or how you should write. In conclusion, please do not try to memorize everything. Read instructions carefully. Your answers must be complete. For example, if it's a sentence, it should start with the capital letter and end with a full stop. Those are the rules of English. Write as neatly as you can. Use your own examples. And if you have any other questions regarding the subject, do not hesitate to contact me. My cell phone number is 0816 10 90 72. Good luck with your exams.